Welcome to the series where I map out all of America's railroad stations, even the abandoned ones, by going through category lists on Wikipedia of railway stations in the United States opened in yada yada year. Alright, so here's what I do. I go through the category each year. In America, it starts in the 1830s. So you go to a year, you go to a station. Okay, I'm gonna choose one that's still open. So here, and then I search it up. So I remove that, rename it Sharon Station. Then I put down what year it was made. It's 1835. Then I put down the date. Unfortunately for this one, it's only the month. Then if it closes, I put down that line and put in the time it closed. Then I put a dash and say what company built it. So for this one, it's the Boston and Providence Railroad. Then I close it, and then I color it. I color each one based on the decade. Since the first railroad opened in 1800, I go with decades from it. So 1810, 1820, then 1830, since the station opened then, it would be that color. And 1840, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 1900, moves on from there. So yeah, that's how I have a station. And then that's it. Then I move to the next station on the list. And yeah, it's really that simple. You can get many stations done in a small amount of time. I got to 1836 before I got the idea to record this. And because I didn't want to redo what I did, because I might lose motivation, we're just gonna miss the first station. The first station is the B&O Railroad Museum, which is in Baltimore, built by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. So now I'm going to start a time lapse, and I shall state facts about each station as they come up. Our first station is Clair, which was originally known as Brushville, which opened on November 27th, 1873. It was closed due to low ridership on June 26, 1972. It was built by the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad is the oldest running system in America that still runs by its original name. Our next station was also built by the Long Island Railroad, Carle Place. Carle Place was built on March 1st, 1837. Like Brushville, it's located on the main line of the Long Island Railroad. As the main line is getting a third track, Carle Place Station will be upgraded to accommodate full-length 12-train cars and become ADA accessible. Our next station is Chatham Station. It was opened in January 1st, 1838, built by the Morris and Essex Railroad. It is now owned by the New Jersey Transit, serviced by the Morristown line. Originally, the station opened next to a large rail yard, though it was demolished for housing. For our next station, we go back to the Long Island Railroad, Maryland Avenue. But actually, it wasn't Maryland Avenue. It was Clownsville. Maryland Avenue was the replacement for that station, opened in 1912. Clownsville was established in June 1837. For a few years in the mid-1870s, the station was renamed in order to trick riders into thinking it went to a place it didn't actually go to steal ridership from a rival company. Our next station is Ellicott Station, down in Maryland. It was opened in 1837 by the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad. After the construction of the interstate highway system, traffic declined at the station. It was closed in the 1960s, with all trains passing the station, but it reopened on April 30th, 1978. The station closed once more, along with the rest of the branch this time, on October 29th, 1983. For our next station, we're going back to the Long Island Railroad with Hicksville Station. If you're wondering why we're going back and forth between the railroads, the list of stations in each category is organized in alphabetical order and not sequential order. Hicksville was opened on March 1st, 1837, as a temporary terminus to the Long Island Railroad. On September 12, 1964, the original station was destroyed and was rebuilt as an elevated station that still exists now. Our next station is a station named Madison on the New Jersey Transit. The preliminary trip happened on September 17, 1837, while regular service started on September 28, 1837. Depending on what your definition is, the station could have opened on either of those dates. Nearby Maplewood opened that very same year, built by the very same railroad. The railroad that built it was the Morris and Essex Railroad, and the station also has the same opening dates. Following Maplewood on the list is Millburn, which is also in the New Jersey Transit. It had the same opening dates, with the preliminary trip being on September 17, 1837, and regular service starting on September 28, 1837. Finally, the last M station to open in 1837 in America, Mineola, built on the Long Island Railroad, also on the main branch. A historic train control tower, called the Nassau Tower, is under threat of being destroyed because of the expansion project adding a third track to the main line. The tower was built in 1839, and the fate of whether it will live or die is unknown. Once again, we go back to New Jersey to the Morris and Essex Railroad with the station of South Orange. It has the same opening dates as the next station. On February 1st, 1916, it was rebuilt as an elevated station. A little farther down the line, we get to Summit Station. Built by the Morris and Essex Railroad, it has the same opening dates as the other stations on the branch, September 17, 1837 with the preliminary trip, and September 28, 1837 with regular service. Back on the main line of the Long Island Railroad, we get to Westbury Station, which opened in 1837. The final station opened in 1837 was Willow Tree on the Long Island Railroad. It was opened on March 1, 1837. And it closed on June 1872. Its location is roughly where the staff-only station Hillside is today on 183rd Street. Now I can say goodbye to 1837 because we're going on to 1838. The first station on the list opened in 1838 was Harriman Station, opened by the Erie Railroad. It closed on April 18, 1983. It was known as Turner Station until 1910, until it was renamed into Harriman. The station was on the Erie Railroad's main line from Jersey City to Chicago. The tracks are now used by the Port Jervis line on the Metro-North Railroad, going from Port Jervis towards Hoboken. Up in Massachusetts, Lynn Station, or Central Square Lynn, was built on August 27, 1838. Lynn is intended to be the terminus of the future extension to the MBTA Blue Line. Due to a lack of funding and constrained finances, the construction of the extension is not likely to begin anytime soon. Going back to New Jersey, Morristown was built by the Morris and Essex Railroad on January 1, 1838. It is served by the Morristown branch of the New Jersey Transit. The Morristown branch, despite its name, does not terminate in Morristown. The next station is New Brunswick Station on the Northeast Corridor. It opened on January 1, 1838. The current elevated station was built in 1903 by the Pennsylvania Railroad. The final station, opened in 1838, is Salem Station back up in Massachusetts. It was opened on October 27, 1838. By the Eastern Railroad, and was redone and rebuilt a total of 4 times. Making our way to 1839, back in New Jersey, Cranford Station opened that year. It was built by the Central Railroad of New Jersey, which, when the New Jersey Transit took over, was renamed the Raritan Valley Line. The next station is Duffield Station, built by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. This is the first station that has opened in West Virginia. The station closed sometime, and is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places since August 3, 2007. It's listed as the Duffields Depot. Back up in Massachusetts, Hamilton-Wenham Station opened on December 18, 1839, by the Eastern Railroad. Nanuet Station was opened in Uptown New York by the New York and Erie Railroad. It opened sometime in 1839. It is currently run by the New Jersey Transit Passiac Valley Line. Back in central New Jersey, the Central Railroad of New Jersey built Plainfield Station in January 1st, 1839. It has been listed as in the state and federal registers of historic places since 1984. The station is one of the two surviving Central Railroad of New Jersey stations in Plainfield, the other being Netherwood Station. There used to be 5. Grant Avenue, Clinton Avenue, and Evona have all been closed. The final station to open that year was also built by the Central Railroad of New Jersey, Westfield. There are historic photographs of Westfield displayed in the tunnel connecting the two platforms. Now welcome to the 1840s. The next two stations, Bound Brook and Dunellen, were also built by the same company on the same branch, the Central Railroad of New Jersey, opening on January 1st, 1840. The original station building for the north side of Bound Brook Station is now a restaurant. Dunellen is the only station on this branch in Middlesex County. Newburyport is the only station not opened in New Jersey in 1840. It was opened by the Eastern Railroad. The station had one of the briefest abandonments on record. The 1830s and the 1840s do have a different color. The 1840s has a very slight darker shade of red. Unfortunately, I do not get to pick the colors. Farmingdale was built by the Long Island Railroad and opened on October 15, 1841. It was delayed by the financial crisis of 1838. Up in the Bronx, Fordham Station was opened by the New York and Harlem Railroad on March 1, 1841. The station is also known as Fordham East 190th Street. It's currently operated by the Metro-North's Harlem Line and New Haven Line. With Green Street Station in Boston, we have our first subway station, though it was not originally built to be a subway station. It was opened by the Boston and Providence Railroad to be used for regional rail, which it was used for. The next station on the list was in Pittsburgh, Massachusetts. It was called the Joseph Seletsky Intermodal Transportation Center, which opened in 1841 by the Western Railroad. Multiple train companies built rail lines to the station, quickly making it a transportation hub. The next station on the list is Suffern. It opened on June 30th, 1841. The station was built by the Erie Railroad. Suffern is the only station used by New Jersey Transit in New York, aside from New York Penn Station, that does not have Metro-North-styled signage trackside. As we move on to the last station, opened in 1841, we move to the funnily named Tuxedo Station, opened in New York. It was opened by the Erie Railroad. The station building was constructed in 1885. The station is currently run by the Port Jervis line of the Metro-North. The first station on the 1842 list is Auburn Station, which is the first station to not have a Wikipedia page. It's located in Pennsylvania. Its location is presumably right next to the Auburn Station Apartments, which is right next to a rail line. It's located in Allentown, so the name Auburn most likely comes from the street. It's located on Auburn Street. The next station on the list thankfully has much more info on it, the Dover Transportation Center. The Dover, New Hampshire Transportation Center. It was opened by the Boston and Maine Railroad in 1842. The station closed on June 30th, 1967. Currently, the building is being leased by a bagel shop. The next station is Forest Hill Station, back in Boston. It's utilized by both the subway and regional rail. The commuter rail station opened in 1842. The rail station was built by the Boston and Providence Railroad. The final station to open in 1842 was Suffolk Station, opened by the Long Island Railroad. It opened on July 14, 1842, on the present border between Brentwood and Central Islip. The station was replaced by Central Islip on November 4, 1873. Now we move onwards to 1843. The first station on the list to open in 1843 was actually located right next to the station we were just in. Its name is Holtzville, and it's also abandoned. It closed on March 16, 1998 due to low ridership. When it opened, it was originally known as Waverly until the 1890s, when farmers complained about their shipments going to an upstate town named Waverly. The next station is also right next to our last station, Lake Road Station. It was the predecessor to Ronkonkoma. Lake Road opened in 1843. And at some point was renamed Lake Station, and then Lakeland. We don't know when it closed, but no record of the original station's existence can be found after 1857. Hermanville, a stop nearby, opened in 1850, 7 years before the last record happened, and then Ronkonkoma came around to replace Hermanville. Middletown Station was built by the Erie Railroad in upstate New York. It opened in 1843 and closed on April 18, 1983, when rail service was taken over by the Metro North. Service on the route of Erie's original main line was discontinued in favor of the Graham line. The station house became the Thrall Library in 1995. Further north on the Erie Canal, we have Niskayuna. It was built by the Schenectady and Troy Railroad. It closed in 1964, and was then converted to a single-family residence. It was acquired by the town, and is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places, first being listed in 2007. Our next station is a few hundred miles east of here, Waltham Station, back near Boston. It opened on December 20th, 1843. The station has an unusual configuration. There are two side platforms. The eastern one's used for inbound passengers, and the western one is used for outbound passengers. It was opened by the Fitchburg Railroad. And now we reach the end of the video. In this episode, we listed all the stations from 1830 to 1843. See you next time.